Studios. The COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hi there, welcome to the COB on this Wednesday afternoon, the 3rd of June. I'm Nadine Blaney. Welcome back, Juliette Sally.
Thank you so much, Nadine Blaney. Lovely to be here. Let's have a look at where the market has finished the day's trade because it has been a positive session, up by around 0.9%. A lot of this optimism coming on perhaps the fact that we might have seen the peak of rate hikes, although you'll note that all of these emails hitting our inbox coming thick and fast. There are a few that still say, I believe, Citi, that we still may get another rate hike, but that GDP, I guess, print just really indicating that maybe we've seen a pause or a peak.
Yeah, so look, we will see, but what it has done is helped to lift the banks that geared down GDP read, those interest rate hikes taking hold. But also today we've seen a lot of strength. We missed each other so much. A lot of strengths in the big miners. So BHP and Rio Tinto, which we will discuss with our guest who is coming up. But first, I would like to run through the sectors of the day because I think they really paint a story. You know, we've had, in your absence, a few really hot sessions for the tech names here locally. That had a lot of people talking about a rotation into tech, investors buying up those beaten down shares. But today, not the day for that.
No, today it was all about BHP and its fresh record high, lifting the miners. BHP up 2.4%. Look at that, nearly $65. Rio Tinto also doing very well, getting towards $195. And most of the miners doing well, just a little bit of a dip there out of Fortescue.
Yeah, so let's take a look at those banks. So you know that the banks have been hit pretty hard in the wake of the budget. Most people have been putting it down to that, and also the fact that they're ex-growth, if we're being fair. But today, a better day for the likes of ANZ, up by 1.6%, and the big CBA up by 1.25%.
Quick look as well at what we're seeing in those tech players. Xero today off by 4%, and Life 360 just taking a small breath after that very big run up yesterday, which was on the back of demand for those AI stocks.
But I think yesterday's early morning newsletter, the title said something about AI optimism abounding. Maybe that was today. They all kind of run into one after a while, to be honest, but you can see that reflected in NextDC. And we had Megaport coming to market, announcing a contract win or a couple new contracts, and then also looking to raise some capital to really cash in on this momentum. But, you know, one of the more interesting comments, I think, coming today from our guests was from Dave Sequeira, Morningstar in the States. Last time he joined us, he was still talking about being overweight US and US tech in particular. Now he's saying you might want to take some profits because the momentum is just so strong.
Yeah, can we go back to that other board just to get to the stories of the day? Because we were kicking it off with Megaport announcing 4 new AI infrastructure contracts worth nearly $459 million, but of course it is in a trading halt.
Yes, it looks to raise that cash. Northern Star extending its gains. So Morningstar says a potential sale of the company would be good for shareholders, and you know that it came after activist investor who's big on the register is agitating for Northern Star to list itself, I guess, essentially for sale.
Macquarie saying its asset management arm and Brazil's IG4 Capital have agreed to sell a controlling stake in a Brazilian bulk terminal operator.
And Paul says the ACCC has approved the acquisition of EG Group Australia. It's up by 3% to $34.86.
Lottery Corporation a little bit lower after lowering its full-year operating expense guidance due to fund its push into AI.
And Superloop upgraded its full-year earnings forecast today. Shares up just 0.25%. So there was a toss-up today between whether or not Megaport or Superloop was the stock of the day. We chose Megaport. But we'll bring you that analysis after we speak with our expert guest.
That turned around from when we were talking Superloop.
I know.
Okay. Anyway, let's welcome to the COB Kai Chen from MPC Markets. Great to see you, Kai.
It was a pleasure.
So BHP really driving momentum today. What are you seeing with this, upward momentum? I was talking to James Gerrish from Market Matters, something like 40% already so far this year that BHP has done, and that train doesn't look like slowing down.
No, absolutely. I think, obviously taking into context a couple of years back where BHP was, the material sector in general was under pressure a little bit. But we're really seeing copper, especially as a commodity, really take off. So BHP does actually have quite a bit of exposure for copper. So, we are seeing a lot of these large miners actually come back into fair value, if not going above that. But yeah, no, I think it's a really good opportunity. At the moment, it's all looking pretty positive for the material sector.
So positive for the material sector, positive day for uranium as well. And I think it can be traced back to an announcement in the United States, Unenco, I think. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, that's looking to enrich uranium further there. What do you guys make of uranium in the energy space?
No, absolutely. I think in Australia, it's a little bit more difficult to capture that theme, and it's definitely coming back around the uranium theme. But the reason why is because a lot of them are smaller miners here in Australia, so you do see a little bit more volatility. But Paladin's done incredibly well today. I think out of there's a couple of mid-sized companies that you would take on as a uranium play in Australia. So Paladin be one of them. Boss Energy's really taken a bit of a hit due to changes in terms of their production guidance and costs as well. But Bannerman's a really good opportunity as well. Deep Yellow is a little bit more speculative. But yeah, no, it's certainly looking pretty good today.
Yeah, and it's Urenco, so it's looking to expand its US enrichment program.
More broadly, we touched on the fact that maybe we've seen a peak in rates. I know you're not an economist, you don't necessarily need to answer that, but how have you been reading the overall economic picture given what we saw with that weaker than expected GDP?
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing this change in cycle. Being a next rates trader, we used to look at these figures quite a lot. But I think coming into June, it's still on the table, the rate cuts. Inflation is still above where the targeted band is. So basically, in terms of pricing, there's about a 91% expectation by December there will be another rate hike. But it has reduced a little bit due to the lower GDP growth. So it's finally kind of positive in a way that we're not going to see we might not see another rate hike, but it's still kind of on the table. So
I think we spoke with CBA's Trent Saunders today, and he reckons that the RBA is on hold from here. Cuts, though, not coming through May, at least until May 2027. But, even Rudy Philippak-Van Dijk on the call today was saying, it looks as if the cycle will turn, That will be positive for equities in Australia, yes or no?
Absolutely. So I think if rates don't go higher, there's definitely more, lowers the funding costs for companies to borrow at. So it's a growth, it's good for the companies that are borrowing. But yeah, I think really the key question is inflation. It's still a little bit too high for where the RBA is comfortable with it. So until that's brought back into line, it's still on the table.
Well, then let's talk about what we're seeing in the resurgence of some of these SaaS companies too, and whether or not there's further opportunity here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we're really seeing that SaaS stocks in the US take off. And just tech stocks in general in the US really taking off. Of course, talking about Micron, talking about SanDisk, crazy amounts of growth. Is it valid? Is it rational? Probably not. I would say a lot of it is speculative. So if you've got it, I would be probably looking to take some profits. But again, it dispels that. We talked about this a couple of months ago, where people were calling the end of SaaS, and I think it was a bit ridiculous. And we're seeing that recover a little bit. So there's still opportunities. There's pockets where, for example, some of the AI infrastructure plays, they've really taken off. So I think they are, getting back to a little bit of bubble territory. But there's things that are still left behind.
We spoke with Jason Todd from 10Cap earlier today. Boy, we're name dropping this afternoon, but you can catch up on all of those interviews online when this program is over. And he just said that it's going to be difficult for ASX investors, in a nutshell, going forward, that it's getting more difficult to construct portfolios here now because we've got slowing growth, and that will, it must impact the earnings profile of companies, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, as a comparison between Australia and the US, you're definitely seeing a lot more growth, and I would arguably say, easier trading conditions in a way. In Australia, the stocks there's nowhere in the middle of the range. So a stock's either really, really doing well, or it comes out with a bad announcement or guidance, and it really just gets punished. So in that middle space in Australia, it's a lot more dangerous these days to be investing in. But yeah, there's over the long run, over a 5-10 year period, you're still going to come out well buying good companies.
I mean, we'll all hopefully come out better 5 or 10 years from now, but the next 6 months, do you reckon it's going to be difficult for the ASX at an index level, I suppose?
Yes, I do. I think there's probably a lot more opportunity just based on the composition of what companies are in the US. I think the US will continue to outperform. So yeah, for Australia, probably lower growth.
Jumping on SpaceX.
Ooh.
We talked about this actually. Well, they're going to IPO at about $2 trillion, I think, for valuation. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of forward projections priced into it because, you know, if you look at from a fundamental perspective,
Not profitable.
It's not profitable. Yeah, but it's a dream. You know, we're going to the moon. So I think in the long run, that space game is going to be massive. It's going to open up new frontiers. NASA is going back to the moon and establishing a base there, and onwards to Mars, right? So I think there's a lot on the horizon. But the real question from a investing standpoint is how they're going to actually monetize this. So I think the idea is that, you know, we're going to send more satellites into orbit, improve communication, potentially data centers on the moon. I don't know how realistic that is, but it's bringing it forward a lot. I think there's a lot of excitement and opportunity presented in that.
And then the way to play it here, I mean, I know we've touched on this as well, but for anybody who's just joining today or wants to know, is it through ETFs? Is it through the likes of EOS, Drone Shield? What do you see?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think how do you actually take advantage of this? You know, there are placements for the IPO. But I think for the way that we like to play it, we like structured products, whether it's a comparable company in the space race or once it IPOs, because I think there is going to be quite a lot of demand for this SpaceX IPO. Whether it justifies the valuation, I think it's going to be a big question mark. It might come out pretty overvalued. So, yeah.
All right, we'll see. I'm going to try and get some. I've already logged into ComSec and put my little...
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I just increased my donation to the Australian Conservation Society or what it is. Who wants to go to Mars? Why don't we fix it up? Fix up the
now
neighborhood.
You're making me feel bad. Kai, thanks as always. Kai Chen
Pleasure.
from MPC Markets. And of course, getting back to equities, the stock of the day was Megaport.
Yeah, the stock of the day was Megaport. And let's take a listen to what my guests had to say. Rudy Philippek Van Dyke from FN Arena and Michael Gable from Fairmont Equities.
There are constraints in how the build out of the whole infrastructure thing is developing, and those constraints, of course, now all of a sudden demand that companies like Megaport take on some of that centralized offering and can offer that to businesses who on their own account can't get there. Yeah? So there are constraints, and I know that's why a lot of people in the US tend to be a little bit skeptical of how long this bull run can continue, because at some point those constraints will become more constrained.
I mean, the offer, I think it's a 1 for 3. There's a 10% discount. You know, let's see where it trades. I think, with a lot of these deals, when companies raise money, it is good to wait a little bit closer until the expiry date of that offer. We saw the long-term chart of Megaport before. It's gone nowhere in 6 years. It's just so volatile. The last dip that it had, I think, was because they were spending a lot more money than what everyone thought they would. So it is the sort of stock that, let's see how it reacts. Maybe the market's not happy with the level of expenditure and suddenly what it's trading at.
Well, 10 stocks picked by you, 2 experts, 1 hour.
Let's get to the companies that have been nominated by you.
It's like a witch hunt over there. Everyone hates data centers.
Just remember that most of their earnings are offshore, so there's no franking credits.
The call is brought to you by Centuria, an ASX-listed property fund manager with $21 billion in assets under management. Want to diversify beyond equities? Explore the Centuria Sydney CBD Prime Office Fund at centuria.com.au.
So the market leaders, Jules? Okay, let's take a look at them. We discussed why we're seeing Paladin Energy so much higher today, putting on 12% to $11.86 to us. That's an interesting one. So 62% drop when it came up against the Singaporean regulators. We had a question on the call today saying, is it worth a punt You'll have to listen to see what my guest said, but today ending up close to 10.5%.
Let's have a look at the laggards then in the space. And Lovisa, this is on the back of brokers sort of downgrades, given that the retailers are going to face these higher wage costs that we saw through the wage bargaining agreement. Lend-Lease down by 6.3%, Vulcan Energy off 5.4%, Temple and Webster also lower, and IDP Education down 4%.
So in the smaller end of the market, BrainChip having a good day, up by 18% to 20 cents per share. Visayarn, so a regular guest that we have on, Claudia Kwan, I might actually give her a call about this one. It's in part of the North Star Impact Fund, putting on a pretty solid 15% to 97 cents per share. I was just seeing what she wrote on LinkedIn. She called it one of her highest conviction picks, so celebrating the gains today.
Let's have a look at the laggards in the small end of town, kicking it off with Energy World down by about 18%, AMA, Qoria, Felix Gold also there.
So it's we're leading up to the non-farm payroll report on Friday. So tonight we get the ADP private read on jobs. The US ISM Services PMI is released. US Treasury Secretary Benson speaks. And still a few results coming in from the tech space, Broadcom, CrowdStrike, and Viva, which I will admit I don't know what that is.
Well, you can Google that while I tell you what's happening tomorrow. Reserve Bank Governor Bullock speaking on the budget before the Senate Economics Legislation Committee, and of course on the back of what we saw with the GDP print today. Goods trade balance for April expected to swing back into a surplus. And an investor briefing on Treasury wine. UBS has raised the price target to $4.50 from $4, maintaining a neutral rating, flagging the upcoming investor day as a key near-term catalyst, and noting that their $100 million cost-saving program and capital allocation under scrutiny with no dividends expected until full year 28.
Well, you are a font of information, and not to be outdone, Viva Systems is the industry cloud for life sciences. So
there you go.
You learn a new thing every day. You learn many new things every day watching Auspice, I think.
You certainly do. I've missed it in my 4 days in Fiji. Couldn't wait to get back. Let's have a look at where the local market has finished the day straight up 0.9%, and the S&P ASX 200 also had a really good session. Can't believe we're in June already, up 61.7%, 8,785, so back above its 200-day moving average.
Yeah, materials, energy, consumer staples, and financials led the gains. Materials, the best performing sector, up 1.75%, so over the past 3 days, putting on close to 4%.
All right, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a good evening.
See ya.